Hey everyone, and welcome back to NDC. Building a camera app like we've done here today is a little bit different on macOS from iOS. There's different permissions required. We use NSView instead of UI view. We also have access to external webcams. You can see here I have the studio display camera, which I use for recording. We also have the FaceTime HD one, as well as I can actually use my iPhone camera. Even if you have things like capture cards, you can use these different external devices. Well, as with macOS apps, we do have to handle our signing and different permissions slightly differently. So in this video, I want to cover the entitlements and show you how to make this macOS app where you can go between video and photo. You can have different recordings. You can play these recordings back. You can even save them to your files. Same with the different photos here. So I'll take a photo. We can actually save this to files if we want to put it on our desktop. And there we go. So this will be everything you need to have the basis of a production macOS webcam app. Now this is part 3 of the media series. If you know AVFoundation from part 1 and 2, you're ready. Let's go ahead and adapt it for Mac. All right, to get started, I'm going to be creating a new Xcode project. You can of course add this to an existing one. And since working on macOS today, I'm going to be choosing that macOS template project of an app. I'm going to call it SwiftUI macOS webcam. Make sure we're on SwiftUI language Swift. Don't need testing or storage today. All right, before we design the front end, let's go ahead and create the back end. We're going to create a new empty file. So this should create a new Swift file here, and we're going to call it Camera Manager. So if you already watched the video on iOS, using the iPhone or iPad camera, you're going to notice a lot of similarities here. The key difference is we have NSImage on macOS, and we have multiple cameras that can be supported. We're going to start off with our imports. We're going to do AVFoundation for this, and we're also going to be importing SwiftUI. And our third import is going to be combine. I'm once again going to be using the observable object and published variables. There's different ways to do this. However, this is just my preferred method. I'm going to do a camera manager class here, which is going to be that NS object, as well as an observable object. We're going to go ahead and add our brace here, and we're going to add 4 published variables. So the first at published is going to be a variable of the captured image. And this is going to be an identifiable image, which will then mark as optional. Now, we will get an error because it's like, what the heck is an identifiable image? This is something that we're going to have to establish. So we'll take care of that right now before we forget. We're going to create a struct at the very bottom of this file outside of the braces. You can also do this in a separate Swift file if you want better organization. And we're going to call it identifiable image. And this is going to be something that conforms to identifiable. And we're going to have 2 things. The first one is going to be the ID, which is going to equal the UUID with the empty brackets here. And then we'll also have the image, which is going to be a UI image. And that is the capital UI image. Then we'll have our image, which instead of the UI image that we were using in iOS is now going to be the capital NS image. The next published variable we'll have is going to be that of is session running. This way we can track when we are recording or not recording, or like looking at the screen, not looking at the screen, right? When we're taking video or even taking a photo, we're kind of running a session to see the live display. So we need to track that. And we're also going to have a published var here of available cameras. Now you may be saying, why do we need multiple cameras? For one thing, external monitors and external devices. I have my MacBook Air webcam, I have my studio display webcam, I could hook up my iPhone, use that as a camera, right? We need to make sure that we're tracking the available cameras, and we can do this as an array of AV capture device. And we're gonna, for now, have it equal an empty array with those square brackets. Then we're gonna have our published var as well for the selected camera. So we know which camera we're using at that moment, which is going to be an AV capture device. We're going to mark that with our question mark. Then we're going to establish our session. So we're going to say let session, and that's going to equal the AV capture session with the empty brackets. This way we can have everything live inside one session. Then going to have a few private constants. So the first one we're going to have is our photo output. We're going to be taking photos and videos with this one. and that's going to equal the AV capture photo output. Similarly, we'll have another private let for our video output. Another great reason why camel case works here with those double O's. And this is going to be the AV capture movie file output. Let's see if we can find that. We want movie file output, not video. And this is going to create a new movie file output. So we should be using that .mov for anything that we record. Then we're going to have one more private let of the session queue. And this is where we're essentially going to kind of give it like a name or an identifier. And we'll use our dispatch queue. And we're going to choose the autofill with the label, and just the label on this one. We're going to give it a name or an identifier. We'll use the reverse DNS. So I'm going to do the com.macwebcam.sessionQueue. Because we're in a class, we're also going to provide an override of initializer. So we can see here it's all giving us the autofill. And within the braces, we're going to have a super.init with the empty brackets. Then we're going to call upon a function we haven't made yet, but we're just going to reference it now, and we'll call it discover cameras. So because macOS can have multiple cameras, the built-in ones, USB webcams, capture cards, all these things, we need to make a function to discover those cameras. We're going to call upon it with this initializer. So right after this initializer, let's go ahead and create that function. We're going to mark it as private, and we'll call it discover cameras, just like we did above. We need nothing within those brackets, and then we'll add our brace. But we're going to create a discovery session, so we can call upon this and we can look for all the cameras that are available. So we're going to establish our discovery session, which will equal the AV capture device. And then we're going to look at the dot, and you can see we have actually the discovery session. This is an object that finds capture devices that match specific search criterias. So within the brackets, we're going to use the autofill here. We have device types, media types, and position. For the device types, within the brackets, we're going to use the built-in wide camera angle. So kind of that built-in camera, same one we used for the iPhone and iPad. And then we'll add a comma and we'll do the dot external unknown. This is an unknown external device type. So this can be things like capture cards, USB webcams, etc. For the media type, we're going to be looking for video. So this is anything that can use video. And for the position, we're going to use the unspecified. We don't know whether it's going to be on the back, on the front. So unspecified just means kind of like ambiguous. Then we'll establish available cameras, which we're going to have equal to be the discovery session.devices that we had just set up. And then we'll have our selected camera, which is going to equal the available cameras. And then we're going to set this to be dot first. So we're going to grab that first element. Oh, make sure you spell available cameras. That is what we had kind of created in the published variables up here. Oh, and I'm learning something today too. Apparently external unknown can just be dot external, and that should fix that little warning there. Okay, so that is our discover of cameras. Next in the camera manager, we're going to create another method in order to configure the setup for the selected camera. Again, you're going to notice a lot of these concepts transfer between iOS and macOS. So we're going to create our method. We'll call it func setup session. Now, we're not going to have anything within the brackets again. We're going to add our braces, and we're going to have our session queue.async. We're going to add our braces, and then we'll add an array of weak self. We'll then say this is in. Get some more space. We're going to use our guard let self to then equal self. We'll add a comma, and we'll have our camera. So let camera equal the self.selected camera. Else we'll go ahead and add our braces to return. We're just making sure that we're establishing the camera, making sure it's selected. Otherwise we'd boot out of the session. Within this session queue, we're going to set the self.session, and from here we're going to begin configuration. This is something that builds it. Something that's built in, marks the beginning changes of a running capture session. We can perform it in one update. Then we'll once again have our self.session, and from here we're going to have our .inputs. This is the input that provides media capture devices for the session. And we're going to use a dot for each for this. We're going to delete the brackets of the for each and instead use a brace. Within the braces, we're going to have our self.session.remove input. Within the brackets, we'll have our $0. Make sure you also add a space in between those braces as well. Then we'll have our self.session.session preset. From here, this is basically like, okay, what preset do we want to use for capturing? There's a whole bunch of different presets you may want to use. I like to just set it on high as it's good for both photo and video. Next, we're going to create another guardlet statement, and this is going to be for the input. For the input, we're going to have this equal our try question mark, and we're going to look at the AV capture device input. You can choose the autofill with the device and the throws. For the device, we're going to be using the camera. Else, because we're using that guardlet, we're going to have an else. We'll have our self.session.commit configuration built-in method. This is going to commit one or more changes to a running capture session, and then afterwards we'll have our return. Okay, hopping out of that guardlet's else, we'll then have an if self.session, and we're going to be saying, okay, if we can add output, so we'll use the built-in can add output. We'll then be passing through that input we had just created. We'll then add our brace, self.session. We're going to be doing the add input and once again passing through that input. So now we've established the selected camera as the input. We know what we're grabbing from. Then we want to add the output of photo and add the output of video. So let's handle the photo output first. So if the self.session, and we're going to be using the can add output. Within the brackets, we'll have our self.photo output. We'll then add our braces. Within the braces, self.session dot, and here we're going to be looking at the add output. Within the brackets, going to be the self.photo output. For the video, same thing, but we're going to be using video output instead. So if self.session can add video, self.video output, see the auto suggest knows exactly what to do. Now, before we commit the configuration, one other thing we might want to do is add the microphone for video. So we'll do our if let, and this time we're going to have our mic to equal the AV capture device dot default for, and then we're going to be grabbing the audio. We can then add a comma, and we'll have our let audio input to equal try question mark. We'll have the AV capture device input, and we'll choose the autofill with the device again. And this is going to be the mic. We just called it MIC. We'll add our brace, and we'll have our self.session.add input. And this time we're using our audio input we had just created. Okay, a couple more things to do in our session outside the braces of the if let. We're going to have our self.session, and from here we're going to commit the configuration. So anytime we begin the configuration, it's going to be like, okay, here's all the things that we're configuring, and then we go down here and then we commit that configuration, and it does it all in like one kind of chunk. And then we'll have our self.session right after, and we'll have it to start running. So it starts the flow of data through the capture pipeline. So it's taking all those settings and starts running that engine. We'll then have our dispatch queue .main.async. And for the code, we're going to have our self.isSession running to equal the self.session is running. So before we move on, let's quickly talk about the method we had just created. This essentially reconfigures an AV capture session to use the currently selected camera and safely resets inputs and outputs. We add the photo and video output here, as well as with the microphone, we have our audio capture. Then we start the session and update the UI state on the main thread. So in short, this cleanly rebuilds the capture session around the chosen camera and enables photo, video, and audio capture and makes sure that they're all ready for use. Now that we've set up the session, let's go ahead and preview what we're going to be capturing. So we're going to create another new empty file here, and we'll call it camera preview. In this new file, we're going to do our imports. We're going to have import of SwiftUI and the import of AVFoundation once again. We're going to create our own struct, and we'll give it the name of camera preview. Now this is going to be an NSViewRepresentable. So this is going to be a SwiftUI wrapper that allows us to use NSView inside SwiftUI. Think of it of the macOS equivalent of UIViewRepresentable. So within the structure, we're going to establish our session, which is going to be the AV capture session. This is going to be provided by that camera controller. We'll then have a method, and this one is going to be the underlying NSView, and we're just going to create it once. So for this function, we're going to call it make NSView, and we're going to use the autofill with the context. And then instead of some NSView, we're going to make it just return the NSView. Make sure you're using those autofills. Essentially, we're just adding these functions as they're required for the NSViewRepresentable. Within this function of make NSView, we're going to have an AVFoundation layer that renders live camera frames. So we're going to let the preview layer, and this is going to equal the AV capture video preview layer. And we're going to choose the autofill with the session, which is that session we had just established above. Afterwards, we want to ensure that the camera feed fills the view while maintaining aspect ratio. So we'll have our preview layer dot video gravity to equal, I like to do the resize aspect fill. There's resize aspect or just resize. I think aspect fill is usually the best to respect that aspect ratio. Then we want to automatically resize the layer when the view size changes. So we'll use our preview layer dot auto resizing mask. And this is going to need to equal an array, so we'll use our square brackets. And I'm going to use the dot layer width sizable, as well as, we'll add a comma here, as well as the layer height size sizable. So we're taking care of the width and the height. Next, we need to attach this to a view. Let's go right after our let of preview layer and let's establish the view. So let the view, and that's going to equal the NSView with the empty brackets. We need to do this because we're actually going to be attaching the preview layer to that NSView. So we're going to have our view.layer, and that's going to equal our preview layer. So we're just passing that information along. And required on macOS to enable a layer-backed rendering is we need to use the view.wants layer. So a Boolean value indicating whether the view uses a layer as its backing store, which is what the setup we're using. We're going to set this to be true, and then we'll go ahead and return that view that we just created. We can see we still do not conform to the NSViewRepresentable. No worries. We just need to add one more function called update NSView. Definitely use the autofill here. And essentially we want to keep the preview layer perfectly sized to the view's bounds. We can do that by establishing an if let of our preview layer, which is going to equal the NSView. Keep in mind those NS are lowercase here, dot layer as question mark, the AV capture should be video preview layer. So a core animation layer that displays video from a camera device. Think of this like your live feed. We're then going to add our brace, and we'll have our preview layer dot frame to equal the NSView dot bounds. So again, we're keeping the preview layer perfectly sized to that view's bound. This is essentially just creating the, as the name suggests, the camera preview. So essentially what we've done here is this is a component in the macOS specific bridging that displays a live camera feed inside SwiftUI by hosting this AV capture video preview layer inside an NSView and keeping it the correct size throughout any UI updates. We've done some back-end coding. Now let's do some front-end coding in our content view so we can view what we're capturing. All right, hopping into our content view, we don't need our hello world, but we will keep the VStack for now. Under the structure of our content view, we're going to create a state object, and this is going to be a private var of our camera manager that we created before, which is going to equal our class of camera manager with the empty brackets. Within our VStack, we're going to be checking if the session is running. Otherwise, we'll be like, hey, video is not found. So we'll do an if the camera manager dot is session running. So in the case that it's true, we'll add our brace. We'll look at our camera preview and we'll pass through the session, which again is the camera manager dot session. Instead of the brackets, let's go ahead and give it a frame. Now you can choose whatever size you want this to be. Because we're using macOS and a resizable window, I'm going to choose a minimum width and height. So I'm going to do min width And I'm going to do 640, and I'll do a min height, and I'll do 480. Again, these are kind of like arbitrary numbers. Choose whatever you want here. Outside of the if braces, we'll go ahead and add our else. So in the case that it's not running, let's display that to a user. You can do this in many different ways. I'm going to do the rectangle.fill, and then let's do the color black here. Then I'll add a frame, and I'll do the min width and min height from our frame of the camera manager, so everything's the same. Then I'll add an overlay here with our braces, and I'll have an image, and we'll do the system image here, and we'll use the video.slash for this one. To me, this is something that says, hey, your webcam isn't available. If you want to add text saying start session, webcam not available, etc., up to you. Otherwise, I'm going to add font, and we'll do the .system so we can make it a larger size, and let's do 68. Yeah, that's like a pretty big, hey buddy, we can't find any video right now. Okay, outside of our else statements, we're going to go down 2 braces, and we're now going to add an h-stack. In this h-stack is where we're going to allow the user to select the camera that they want to use. So we're going to add an if. We're going to have our camera manager available cameras. If the count is greater than 1, so if we have more than 1 camera available, which I have 1, 2 webcams. So in that circumstance, we'll add a picker. Let's go ahead and choose the title key, and we'll say camera. For the selection, we do need a binding. However, we can use the binding variable of the camera manager .selected camera. We're going to go ahead and get rid of the content placeholder here, and instead, outside the brackets, add a brace, and we'll use our for each. So for each one of these camera manager .available cameras, we'll add a comma, and we'll have an ID, which is going to be that \unique ID. We'll then add one more brace, and we'll say camera in. We'll have our text. Within this text argument, so within the brackets, we'll have our camera.localized name. Then we'll add a .tag to this, and within the brackets, it'll be the camera as AV capture device. Now this isn't an autofill, so let's go all the way to the top and import AVFoundation, and you may also want to import AVKit as well at the very top. The other thing is in this text tag here, camera as AV capture device, we're going to use a question mark there. Okay, we're going to go down 2 braces, so essentially at the end of our picker here, we're going to add a frame so we can style it. And let's give it a width of 200. And we're also going to add a on change. And within the brackets, we're going to have of. So on the change of the camera manager selected camera, we'll then add our brace for the code that comes after. We're going to do underscore comma underscore in. We're going to have our camera manager setup session. So essentially we're using the picker to allow us, when we do have more than 1 camera, to choose between any of those cameras using their localized name. So it should say like Mac Studio display. I think my MacBook one's just called like MacBook Air webcam. I guess we'll see when we test it out. And then whenever we are changing the value, we're saying, hey, setup session, we're changing what the camera is. Make sure, I don't know, I'm using this to signify we're talking to the function, but we're saying, hey, we've changed the device. Let's go ahead and run through the setup session again. So you're using the correct device, correct aspect ratio, things like that. Okay, let's go to the end of our if statement, but we still want to be within the H stack here. I'm going to add a spacer just so we can push things from one side to another. And we're going to add a button here, and we'll call it capture photo. We'll then add our brace. Now we don't have the function built yet, but we'll just say captures photo. So we'll have this, so when we do have the functionality, we can wire it up later. We'll have our button style of bordered prominent. And after this button, let's add another spacer here just to create more space on the page. And we can see how it looks in the UI. All right, let's go down one more brace. So this would be the end of the H stack. Let's go ahead and give it a frame. And let's do a min width. Let's have this min width be 800. And then let's also have the min height be 600. Let's go ahead and add some padding here. And we can also add a background if we want. just so it kind of stands out a little bit more. And for this background, I'm going to be using the dot ultra thin material. Great, and let's go down one more brace where our built-in padding is. From here, we'll establish our frame. We'll add our min width again. For our minimum width, let's set it to be 800. And for our minimum height, let's do 600 as well. After that, we'll have a dot on appear. We're going to change this to be the braces. And when it appears, we're going to have our camera manager dot setup session. So whenever it appears, we'll just call upon that function. Make sure you have the lowercase c camera manager. Now, before we get to testing, there's a couple more things we need to do. We need to go to our app file. So whatever the name of your application is, followed by app, it should have been created when you created this project. After we have our window group going into content view, we're going to add our window style. For this one, we're going to have the dot hidden title bar. You can of course customize this however you'd like. And we're also going to have the default size. And we're going to set that to be the exact same width and height as our min height and width from our content view, which I believe was 800 width and 600 height. All right, I mentioned there was a couple things. Well, we also need to go to our signing and capabilities. So we're going to click on the topmost file here. It kind of looks like the little hammer with the name of our application. So in my case, SwiftUI and macOS Webcam. And you'll see we have a new tab here. I'm going to go over to the signing and capabilities. We need to make sure that we have the camera entitlement. We can see here the app sandbox. We have network, hardware. We're going to want the camera and the audio input. You can also choose things like USB, Bluetooth, etc. here. And under the hardened runtime, once you've done that, you should see the audio input and camera also enabled there. You can also go to the capability and you can add camera. Now we can scroll down. We are required to have a usage description. This is a message that tells people what the app is and why it's requesting the permission. Make sure this is a meaningful message. Otherwise, you can actually have your app rejected from the App Store if this isn't clear. So we need camera access to capture video and photos for the app experience, right? If you're using this for like meetings or for, photo editing, right? Make sure it's clear. Before we do test, we also need to add the microphone as well. Again, we need the usage description here. So we need microphone access to record your audio during videos, something like that, right? So we need to make sure we have the camera and microphone usage descriptions to tell that to the user. You can also do this manually, as you can see here through the info.plist, where you have the privacy, microphone usage, and camera usage, and it just puts the string in the info.plist. Okay, let's go ahead and run the application. Okay, when it pops up on the screen, we can see it would like to access the camera. We can choose to don't allow or allow. If you do choose don't allow, you can always change this or update this in the settings. Same thing with the microphone here. Need access. Again, that's the string we had typed out. Let's put allow. Hey, and there we go. You can see my messy office here. Now, because I mentioned I do have two different webcams, we can see the camera studio display. We have the FaceTime HD camera. Oh, I guess that's what it's called for the MacBook Air, FaceTime HD camera. And as well as because my iPhone's paired, we can see my iPhone camera. Let's swap it to this webcam. Oh, I don't like that angle at all. That's not a great angle. I'm putting it back to the studio display. I guess the iPhone camera would work. Let's go ahead and try it out. If it does work, you'll see a little rubber ducky, hopefully. Oh, it's asking. Oh yeah, there we go. So we can actually use, don't judge how messy my desk is. We can actually use any of those cameras there, all kind of like built in, right? We didn't have to do too much coding to get that off the ground. As well as we have our capture photo button, but right now, currently, we don't have that capability. We kind of just put it as a placeholder. So let's go ahead and add that capability next. All right, let's go ahead and stop running our app. We're going to return to our good old trusty camera manager, and we're going to go down right before the very last brace of our class here. We're going to be creating a couple new methods. So we're going to create a new function method here, and we'll call it capture photo. Go ahead and have nothing within the brackets, but then we'll add a brace, and we're going to reference our session queue.async, which is the autofill with code. For the code, we're going to have our square brackets with our weak self in. Then we'll have a guard let statement of self to equal self, else we'll go ahead and return, just like we've done before. Now we want to have a default photo capture setting. So we'll have our let settings, which is going to equal our AV capture photo settings with those empty brackets. Just as a note, if you wanted to here, you could have your, just as a note, if you wanted to have a specific file, let's get that. Then within this function, we want to trigger capture, and we want to have the arrival of that via a delegate callback. So we're going to have our self.photoOutput.capturePhoto. We're going to use the autofill. What are we doing this with? Well, we're doing this with those settings. And for the delegate, we're going to set this to be self. Now, this is going to throw an error because it's like, hey, the camera manager does not conform to the AV capture photo delegate. So we can add the missing conformance, or you can scroll all the way to the top where you have your class, and after the observable object, we will go ahead and add that conformance. So that's going to be the AV capture photo capture delegate. It's a mouthful. AV capture photo capture delegate. And that should resolve that error. Scrolling back down, we actually want to change the photo output, and this is called when the photo has actually finished processing. So we're going to do function of photo output, and you can see that we have the autofill. We're going to be doing the autofill with the output and the did finish processing photo. And then it also has the error at the end. All we're going to be changing is the code. We're going to be keeping that function parameter the exact same. We want to handle whenever the capture fails. So we'll do an if let error to equal the error, we'll add a braces, and we'll just go ahead and print to the console, capture error. This way we can figure out what's going on, and we'll show that error.localized description, and then return. Still within this function, but outside the if let, we want to convert the photo buffer into image data and then NSImage. So we'll do a guard let statement, and we're going to have our image data, which is going to equal the photo.file data representation. Use the autofill there. We'll then add a comma, and we'll have another let, which is going to be the NSImage to equal the capital NSImage. And from here, we're going to be wanting to look at the data, which is going to be that image data we had just created. Outside those brackets, we'll do an else. In this case, we'll just print we failed to convert the photo and then return. Great. After that guard let statement, we'll then publish the image to SwiftUI on the main thread. So we'll use our dispatch queue.main.async with our code, and we'll have our array of weak self in. And from here, we'll have our self $.captured image to then equal the identifiable image, which we've created before. And for that image, it's just going to be the NSImage that we're converting. So that handles our photo output. Now we actually want to save the captured photo. We're going to do a function of save photo this time. In the brackets, we're going to have the underscore image, which will be the capital NSImage. We'll then add our braces. We're going to have our session queue once again, .async with our code. For this code, once again, we're going to be doing the guard let, but the purpose of this is going to convert the NSImage into a PNG. That's a pretty standard file type. So we'll do a guard let, and we'll have our image data, which is going to equal the image dot, and here we're going to be using the TIFF representation. Now this is a data object containing TIFF data for all the image representations in the image. We'll then add a comma, and we're going to have a bitmap this time. So let bitmap image equal the NS bitmap, and we want the image rep. Now I'm going to choose the autofill with the data, which is again going to be that image data. We'll add another comma here, and we're going to have the PNG data. So let PNG data, which is going to equal the bitmap image dot representation. We're going to use the using and properties autofill. So for the using, we're going to be doing .png, and you can see you can do PNG, JPEG, BMP, GIF, TIFF. I say GIF, not GIF, I know. And for the properties, this needs to be an array. Fortunate for us, we can just do an array with the colon inside. Then we need our else statement. We'll add a brace, and this is just in case it fails. We'll just say failed to convert image to PNG, and then return. Next, we're going to allow the user where they actually want to save this image. So we've done the conversion. Now we're going to let them choose. So we're going to do our dispatch queue main.async with our code. For the code, we're going to establish a panel, which is going to equal the NSSave panel. Now, if you've saved things on your Mac before, you'll probably be pretty familiar with this pop-up. And when we get there, you'll be like, oh yeah, that thing, that's how I save different files on my computer. Then we're going to have the panel.allowed content types. We can actually choose what the user's able to save it as. In this case, you can do an array. We're going to be doing it as just the PNG. Next, we'll look at the panel.name field string value. This is kind of like the default value. This needs to be a string, and we're going to call it photo.png. This is kind of the default name. And then we'll have our panel.can create directories to equal true. This way is when they're saving it, if they want to create a new folder, let's say they're having like meeting photos or photos with friends, right? They can still create those different directories. Still within this dispatch queue, we're going to create an if statement, and we're going to have the if the panel.run module. This is going to display the panel and begins the event loop. If this equals dot, and then we're going to do capital OK, we'll then let the URL equal the panel.url. We'll then add the brace. We'll add a do and a catch. For the do, we're going to try to take that PNG data. We're going to write it to that URL that the user wants to save it to. We'll use the ns workspace .shared.activate file viewer selecting. We're going to be looking at an array of just that URL. Otherwise, we'll do our catch, as our do's need to have a catch, and we'll print that there's a save error. And we can use that error.localized description to track it. Before we test this, we want a way to be able to actually preview the photos that we've taken. So we're going to create a new file from template under macOS, user interface, SwiftUI view. We're going to call this one PhotoPreviewView. Go ahead and get rid of the preview and our text of hello world here. We're also going to import AVFoundation and import AVKit. So this is how we're going to be previewing the image before we choose to save it. So we're going to establish an item, which is going to be an identifiable image. This is a structure we've created before. And then we're going to have on save, which is going to be empty brackets and return void. When we're actually saving this, we're going to be calling upon the save function within the sheet when it appears. Then we're going to have dismiss, so we'll call it on dismiss, which again is going to have the empty brackets and return void. Oh, I'm sorry, these are supposed to be in between the structure and variable body of SumView, so definitely move those up where we normally keep our constants and variables. Actually, within the variable body SumView this time, we're going to create a VStack, and immediately within the VStack, we're going to have an HStack. This HStack is where we're going to have our buttons to cancel and save. So we'll have our first button here, and we'll call it cancel. This is going to call upon our on dismiss with the empty brackets. Now, something you also may want to do for fun is the .keyboard shortcut, and you can do the .cancel action. Afterwards, we'll include a spacer, and then we'll have another button. We'll do the save to files. And we're going to call upon the on save. And again, if you want to do the keyboard shortcut, you can do the .default action for this one. That's pretty good user experience. After the HStack, we'll add a background. And let's do the ultra thin material again. We can also add a little bit of padding before the background. Okay, so outside the H stack, but within our V stack, we're going to then display that image. So we're going to have our image, which is going to be the NSImage, and we'll have the item.image being displayed. We'll add some properties like resizable and maybe scale to fit. We can also add a frame. For this frame, I suggest doing the max width to be set to infinity, and same with the max height, also to be .infinity. We can also add a background if you want, and we can set it to be black. Then after this VStack, let's go ahead and give it a frame. We'll do the dot frame, and we'll include a min width. I think we were doing 600 and a min height of 460. Can't remember, 460 or 450. Let's try 450. We can always come back and change this later. All right, now let's hop into our content view. After our on appear braces here, we're going to add a sheet. And from here, we're going to have an item. What is that item going to be? Well, it's going to be that displaying of the photo preview. So we're going to have our $ of camera manager dot captured image. We'll then add a brace and say item in. From here, we'll be looking at our photo preview view, and we have the autofills. So for the item, that's just going to go ahead and be the item. Then on save, we're going to change this to be a brace. Within here, we're going to have our camera manager dot save photo. And that's just going to be the item dot image. Then on dismiss, we're going to add our braces, and we're going to have our camera manager dot captured image to equal nil. Essentially, we're going to save that current item. And then for the captured image, we're just going to basically say, nope, we don't want it anymore. We're setting this to be nil. Now, before we test one more thing, we need to go back to our signing and capabilities. And under the file access, we need to change the permission and access to read and write. Otherwise, we'll get an error saying we're not allowed to save. But since we have it on read and write now, we need permission to write. We should be good to go. All right, let's go ahead and launch our app and give it a test. Oh, I forgot in our content view, real quick, we just had the placeholder of capture photo. Let's go ahead and call upon our camera manager dot capture photo. There we go. Okay, that was funny. I was like, wait a second. I think I just left this as a print statement. Yes, I had. Okay, I'm gonna do a photo of me giving a thumbs up. There's our preview. We can see here in the middle of the screen. Let's go ahead and save it to files. There we go. We can see save as photo, default documents. I've changed it to my desktop, and I'm going to rename it from photo to be thumbs up. Perfect. Let's go ahead and save it. And you can see after we've saved it, it's actually showing us where it is on the computer. We can double click, and there's that photo we took. Now we can press cancel, and it should completely dismiss it. We can do another photo. I don't know, I'll just thumbs down this time. There we go. We can, of course, save it. Again, just has the placeholder photo. You might want to get a little bit more in depth with your logic and actually have like a date formatter and have it be based off of the current date and time. Totally up to you. But we can see, even after the app's done running, we still have our photo saved to our desktop. Okay, now it's time to handle the video playback. So we're going to hop back into our camera manager here. So we're going to hop back into our camera manager here. And we're going to add a couple more properties. The first is another published var. And this is going to be for whether or not we are recording. So we'll go ahead and call it is recording. And by default, that's going to be false. We don't want to always be recording before we're ready. And then we'll have a published var for the recorded video URL. So if you remember and you watched the recording video for iOS and iPadOS, essentially we have to have a URL for where the file is temporarily being held. So we're going to do the recorded video URL, which is going to be the URL with the question mark. Now also in our private lets, we're going to add one more where we have the photo output, video output. We're going to create a private var of the current input, which is going to be an AV capture device input. This way we can track whether or not the user wants to record video or if they want to record a photo. Or I guess take a photo. You know what I mean. Okay, let's go ahead and scroll down and go right before the very last brace of this class, and let's create our function to start recording. So we'll do func start recording, empty brackets, we're going to add our braces, and we'll do our session queue async. Within our code, once again, we'll have our weak self, which is going to be in, and we'll have a guard let statement for self to equal self, else we'll go ahead and return. Wonderful. So with video, we do need to have a temporary URL where it's being held. So we'll create that temp URL. As we're recording, we need that video to kind of exist somewhere, and then whether we save it or not, we'll handle that later. This is going to equal the file manager.default.temporary directory. So this is going to go to the default temporary directory. Even as I'm recording this video now through OBS, it's kind of living in this little temporary file. Okay, we're going to add two properties. The first is the appending path component. I'm just going to get rid of the autofill here, and instead within the brackets, we're just going to be providing the UUID with the empty brackets .UUID string. This way it has like a unique name. Then we're going to add the appending path extension, and we're going to do as a string a MOV. So it's going to be that .mov file. Then we'll have our self.video output, and this is going to call upon our start recording to. And because we've already established that temp URL, let's go ahead and send it there. And for the recording delegate, we're going to mark this as self. Now, just like with our photo delegate, this is going to throw an error because we are missing the AV capture file output recording delegate. Again, you can either scroll up all the way to the top and add it, or just press the apply, and we'll see that it does get added here. Now, it is also adding a new function of file output. So we can leave the autofill here for now, but we do need to update it with some code. And so it's going to be pretty quick. For the code portion, we're just going to handle the error. So if let error equal error, we'll go ahead and print the console, recording error. We will know why, what happened, and we'll have our error.localized description as we normally do, and then we'll return. Outside of that if let, we're going to go ahead and add a dispatch queue .main.async, and for our code we're going to include that array of weak self in. Then we'll have our self, and we'll use our question mark .is recording to equal false, and then our self question mark .recorded video URL is going to equal the output file URL. Okay, so that in conjunction with our start recording is going to allow us to begin recording. The only problem right now is we don't have a way to save the video. So let's go ahead and create that method. So do func save video. Now within the brackets here, we're going to have underscore temp URL, which is going to conform to that URL. We'll then add our brace, then we'll have our dispatch queue .main.async. We can actually go to our save photo, and we can actually copy a lot of this. So I'm going to grab the panels here, and I'm going to paste them, but we need to make some changes. For the allowed content type, we're going to do .movie. For the default name string value, we'll call it video.mov. And we can leave the create directories on true as well. Okay, next we'll handle that panel a little bit more. We'll do the if the panel.run module double equals capital OK. We'll add a comma, and then we'll let the destination URL. And that's going to equal the panel.url. We'll add our brace. We're going to add our do and our catch again. So for our do, we're going to try the file manager.default, and we're actually going to use the .copy item. We're going to choose the at in the to. So the current app is that temporary URL, and to, we're going to go to the destination URL. So within our do, we then want to reveal the saved video in Finder. So we're going to use our NS workspace .shared. Then we'll have the .active file viewer selecting, and for the file URLs, we're going to go to the square braces of destination URL. Then we want to clean up any temporary recordings. So we'll use our try question mark and we'll have the file manager.default, and then we'll remove the item at the temp URL. We don't want to keep all those temporary files forever. Right after our do, we'll go ahead and add our catch. And this is just our error handling. We'll go ahead and print, don't need the capital P. Go ahead and print that the video saved error. And we'll go ahead and interpolate the error.localize description. Okay, we most certainly also need to, since we've started recording, we've saved it, we almost certainly need to also provide a way to stop recording. So let's go ahead and create that. We'll call it stop recording. Nothing within the brackets. We'll go ahead and add our brace, and we'll just look at our session queue once again, .async. Our code, our weak self, which is going to be in, and then we'll have our self question mark dot video output, and we're going to use the dot stop recording, which tells the receiver to stop recording the current file. Nice and easy on that one. One more thing is at the very bottom of our file where we have our structure of identifiable image, we also need to make sure that we have our identifiable URL. So we'll create a new struct here and we'll call it identifiable URL. And this is also going to conform to identifiable. Our brace, and we're going to have an ID, which is going to equal the UUID with the empty brackets. And then we'll also have the URL, which is going to conform to the capital URL. This is important because these are our helper models for the image and the video URLs. Okay, we have a way to preview our current photos, but we don't have a preview for our video. So let's make a new file from template, and we'll do our SwiftUI view again. Let's call it VideoPreviewView. Once again, get rid of our boilerplate here. And we're going to go ahead and import AVKit and import AVFoundation as well. Under our structure, we're going to have three things. We're going to have the URL, which is going to conform to the URL. Then we're also going to have the onSave, which is going to have those empty brackets, and then return void. And then our onDismiss, which is also going to be those empty brackets and returning void. Within our variable body of some view, we can actually use a lot of the same logic from our PhotoPreviewView. So I'm just going to go quick. We're going to have our VStack, which is immediately then going to have the HStack. Within this HStack, we're going to have a button, and let's call it cancel. This is going to just call our onDismiss. We can use that keyboard shortcut again for the .cancel action. And then we'll add a spacer. And then we'll have the button, and we'll call it save to files, which will call our onSave. And again, the keyboard shortcut for this can be the default action. We'll add our padding. And I believe we also had a background with the ultra thin material, one of my favorites. Now the big difference is going to be, we're going to be using a video player. And for this video player, we need to tell it, okay, I want you to use a certain player. And for that, we can just use the built-in AV player. Now this does require a URL, but we've already handled that by passing through the URL. Then we'll have the frame. We'll do our max width, be .infinity, and our max height, the exact same thing, so .infinity for both. You may also wish to add a frame to this, and let's do a min width of 600, I believe, and then I can never remember. I choose like these arbitrary numbers, and I'm like, I think this is what they are. So let's try 600 and 450. Again, super simple view, but we just want to make sure that we have the video player using that built-in AV player. Super easy to use, has the pause play, go forward and back like 10 seconds. Okay, we are almost good to go. We're going to hop into our content view now. We're going to scroll up all the way to the top of our project, and we're going to add an enum in order to handle the different capture modes. We'll call it capture mode, add a brace, and we'll have two cases. The first one will be photo, the second one will be video. Again, if you watched the iOS capturing photo and video tutorial, a lot of this will feel pretty much the same. We'll do our @save private var, and we'll reference our capture mode, if I could type, that was pretty funny, which is going to conform to the capture mode, and by default we'll have it be on photo. Okay, let's scroll down. Let's go to the end of our picker within the H stack. Right next to that picker where we're changing the camera, let's also add a picker. And let's have this one be based off the mode. Now this is just how I'm choosing to do the user interface. You can of course make this your own. I'm going to add the selection to be based off of the capture mode. We're going to delete the placeholder for the content, and instead we're going to add our brace. We're going to have our text, and we'll say the first one is photo. And this tag is going to be based off of the capture mode dot photo. And then we'll have text for video, which will then also have that tag. This time it'll be for the capture mode of video. That makes sense. I'm gonna move this over since we're not using our preview right now. I'm also gonna add a picker style to this one. I'm gonna make it segmented. It should look a little bit better. And we'll add a frame and we'll add some width. Let's set this to be 200 maybe. Where we have our button of capture mode, I suppose that works. But let's go ahead and have that only be available when we're taking a photo. So if the capture mode double equals the dot photo, we'll add our brace, and this is where we'd want to have that take a photo button. And of course you can style this the way you want. Right now I'm just like leaving it pretty basic, but we've wrapped it in the if. So in the case of where we're not taking a photo, it would be video. We can just use else for this. Let's go ahead and add a button. And for this one, we'll style a little bit more. We'll say if the camera manager dot is recording, not is session running, we want is recording. We'll then add our brace, and we'll have our camera manager dot stop recording. Else we would have the camera manager start recording. And because the way we've set up this button, we need to include a label. And I'm choosing to do a label because in this case, we can go ahead and add a brace and add a proper label with the capital L. We'll do the title, key, and image. For this, we can use a ternary operator, and we can basically say, okay, if the camera manager is recording, we'll add our question mark. We'll have it say stop recording. We'll then use the colon to say else start recording. Then for the image, we're going to change this to instead be a system image. And this will again be based off of the camera manager. If it is recording, we'll add our question mark. In that case, we'll have our stop.circle.fill. Otherwise, we'll do the record.circle. Now, last time with the iOS version, we made our own custom button. It's totally up to you. I'm being a bit more lazy on this one. Or am I just showing you another way to do it? Yeah. But let's also add a button style border prominent, and let's go ahead and tint it. And again, we can do our ternary operator. So if it is recording, we can use our question mark and let's have it be red. Else, let's go ahead and make it blue. Now let's also tell the users that we're recording. So outside of this brace, let's go ahead and do an if the camera manager dot is recording. We'll add our brace, and let's do an H stack here. And we'll add a circle, make the fill, let's do red. And then we'll add a frame, we'll make it pretty small, like a width of maybe 10 and a height of 10. And then we'll have some text saying recording, ... And then we can add some font, we'll make it small, like caption. And then we can have some foreground style to match the color of red. Okay, the last thing we have to do is have a sheet to display the video preview. Let's scroll down, and right after our other sheet here, we're going to add one more sheet. And with this, we do need to pass through an item. However, for this one, we're going to do a capital B binding. Now, I recommend using the autofill here with the get and the set. For the get, we're going to go ahead and add braces, and we're going to have our camera manager, and we're going to be looking at the recorded video URL. And from here, we're actually going to map it. Since we're mapping, we're going to add another set of braces, and we're going to look at the identifiable URL. And within the brackets, we're going to have that URL, which we're going to set to be $0. Then in our set, once again, we'll add those braces and we'll look at the camera manager.recordedVideo URL, which is going to equal the $0 $.URL. Now at the end of our sheet, we can see here we're missing the argument. So we're going to add a brace and say item in. Now we want to display it within our video preview URL. We'll do just that. For the URL, that's easy. It'll be the item.url. For the onSave, once again, we're going to add our braces. We're going to look at our camera manager.saveVideo. And for the URL, again, item.url. For the onDismiss, let's go ahead and add our braces. And we're going to then have our camera manager.recordedVideo URL to equal nil. Now, before I forget, we'll also want to put that in our preview video after we save the video. We want to clear it, just like how we did. And you know what? Before I forget, let's also do that in our camera manager.captured image. Let's also set that to be nil so we can clear it afterwards. That'll be a bit more of a better user experience. Okay, we should be good to go. So we should be able to record some video with audio as well. Okay, and we can see we have all of our different cameras still. We have the mode between photo, which still works perfect. Then we also have video. So I'm going to do a quick video recording test, and we'll also make sure that it's picking up the microphone. Hello everyone, this is a video recording test. Woo, I'm dancing. Okay, and we can see here we have a little preview. We can play. Hello everyone, this is a video recording test. Woo, I'm dancing. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and save it to files. It's going to be default called video. I'll just say video test. Go ahead and save it. You can see there it is. This should open up in QuickTime. Perfect. Everyone, this is a big. All right, there we go. We don't need to go through this a million times. All right, and that is our app. Now, there's certainly a lot of improvements that can be made. One quick fix I forgot to mention is in our function of start recording, we actually want to put the dispatch queue.main to async and have the self-recording to equal true. This is going to allow the UI to properly flip. I'll show you what that looks like now. So now when we do the start recording, we properly see the stop recording and the text telling us that we are recording. So really quick fix, again, just in the camera manager under our start recording, you'll just have the dispatch queue.main.async self.isRecording to equal true, and that will fix the UI bug there. All right, and although it's pretty basic, this is the core of our tutorial today. I really wanted to just show you how to handle the logic, taking the photos, displaying it, taking video, playing that back, permissions, access. I know a lot of people with the permissions, especially on macOS. Again, it's just under the project setting and capabilities. Make sure for the app sandbox, camera, audio input, anything else you need to include to save those files, whether that's the image or the video. Make sure you have read and write access. If you're going specifically to any folder, update that as well as include the camera permission under the hardened runtime, audio input, camera. Make sure you have the microphone as well, especially if you're doing video. But you can do whatever you want with this template. You can even have it be for like a meeting software or just photo editing, or even just grabbing the AV output if you want to do like facial recognition and scanning. The sky's really the limit. The UI we built is also really basic today. I'll put the link to the GitHub in the description below. Okay, I gotta close this because there's two of me on the screen. That's way too many of me. But I will put the full completed file on my GitHub in the description below. But hopefully this helped you access the webcams, the different external devices, microphone, and to take photo and video for your macOS app. Otherwise, have a great day, dream big, code bigger. Thanks for watching this series, and we'll see you in the next.